Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Earlier today, the House unanimously passed the Falun Gong Protection Act in a voice vote. The bill would sanction those involved with forced organ harvesting in communist China. Joining me now to discuss what the bill does and its significance is Levi Browde. He is the executive director of the Falun Dafa Information Center. Levi, thank you so much for joining us. Great to see you again. Now, to begin, the House has passed the Falun Gong Protection Act. This is the first bill to protect Falun Gong. How significant is this?
It's enormously significant. I mean, this is a bill that's literally going to save lives. It's going to go a great length to curtail the crime of forced organ harvesting. And I think what most people don't realize is this is going to bring hope to not just the tens of millions of people who practice Falun Gong, but you have to remember every time a Falun Gong practitioner is taken away from their home and detained or put in prison, as they have been in the millions over the last quarter century, that devastates a family, it devastates a community. So this bill is enormous in terms of the impact it's going to have on victims, their family, their communities, and really anybody suffering from human rights abuses inside China.
On that note, digging into the bill, give us a sense of what it covers.
Well, it's really three main things. One, it directs the Secretary of State to designate the persecution of Falun Gong either a crime against humanity or genocide, much like the last administration designated for the Uyghurs. The second thing, it really is a statement of policy. Now, this would become, in law, the U.S. official policy to not be complicit in forced organ harvesting and take measures to actually stop this horrible crime. And it also empowers the executive branch to take real measures, blocking assets, visa prohibitions, things of this nature, to anybody who's either part of this crime or participating or sort of complicit in the crime. So there's quite a few measures in place that have some real teeth to help out the tens of millions of Falun Gong practitioners suffering in China.
When it comes to organ harvesting, how did this start? What is the extent of this?
Well, I mean, this goes back 15 years or more when we first found out about this crime, and it's been going since that time. And one of the things that's been difficult is that the Chinese regime has made it their top priority to not only silence discussion on forced organ harvesting, but to try to convince the world that this wasn't happening. Anybody looking at the evidence was very clear from the beginning, this is horrific, it is happening, and it's happening at scale. And I think that's another important part of this bill. It kind of puts that debate to rest, because now the American government, the federal government, is now saying, this is happening, we're going to talk about it, we're going to get our allies to talk about it, and most importantly, we're going to do something about it.
And in terms of this bill, how does sanctioning individuals found funding or supporting organ trafficking in China help bring an end to the persecution against Falun Gong?
This is the part that most people miss. This is much bigger than possibly losing access to some assets they have in the U.S. or not being able to travel here. Senior Chinese officials across China have family members that come here or have aspirations to get out because they don't like look at the prospects of the Chinese regime. And so that sends a lot of fear up and down the rank and file of senior Chinese leadership and even mid-tier Chinese leadership, and really ripple effects across the country where, again, we're talking about a people that via the state-run media for a quarter of a century have been saying, vilifying things about Falun Gong, and certainly nothing about the rest of the world supporting it. And here's the most powerful government in the world, the U.S. government, saying we're going to go after people that are responsible for committing forced organ harvesting and targeting Falun Gong. And that message, when it gets to the Chinese people, and it will, can have enormous ripple effects across China.
The bill is now headed to the Senate, but what else can lawmakers do?
Well, I think that's the most important thing, preferably before the recess in August, is get this in front of the Senate, get them to pass it, get it signed, get this thing into law so we can actually start working on it. I mean, because if you look at the bill, one of the things that it mandates is that the executive branch within 180 days start naming names, senior Chinese officials, military leaders. I mean, we're talking possibly very senior people in the Chinese leadership. Name those names, find out what their crimes are, and go after them. And so getting this bill through, I think, should be the laser focus of our federal government and people supporting policy more broadly in the U.S.
Levi Browde, Executive Director at the Falun Dafa Information Center, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tiffany.